Welcome back to Systems of Scale. I'm Ian Gatsky. Today, I'm joined by Kathryn Eipl. Kathryn's work sits at an interesting intersection. She blends cognitive behavioral tools with sound healing, Reiki, and nervous system work. But what stood out to me in this conversation is that she's not only talking about healing as something vague or abstract, but she has a real method, a sequence, and a way of helping people get underneath patterns like self-doubt, self-sabotage, addiction, and emotional dysregulation. In this conversation, we get into what it actually means to personalize transformation without turning the whole thing into chaos, why by itself usually is not enough to create change, and how old beliefs can keep running a person's life long after the original moment that created them is gone. If you're new here and you get value from this conversation, hit subscribe and share it with a friend. And now here is my conversation with Kathryn Eipl. Kathryn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Ian. I'm excited to get into our conversation today.
Me too. Kathryn, you've named your unique method in serving clients the NeuroResonance Method, and you've laid out a 6-phase process. So for somebody hearing that method for the first time, what problem is your method designed to solve, and how does the sequence actually move a person from dysregulation to stability? How does it move them through that process?
So the NeuroResonance Method, first off, it's meant to serve people who are wanting to make a big shift in their life, whether that's how they think about themselves or they're working through creating new behaviors. A lot of times I work with people who are overcoming addictions and want to move out of the thought process of feeling like they need that substance or that issue, because it's not always a substance, right? It can be food or other activities that you become addicted to. It's also great for people who are seeking to move out of a self-sabotaging train of thought. So if you feel like you're not good enough, or there's this like overwhelm of self-doubt, that's gonna prevent you from moving forward, from putting yourself out there more. So that's really what the audience of the NeuroResonance Method is designed for.
That's a important problem to solve, right? If you can get to the root of unlocking what's holding people back from changing their behavior, those self-sabotaging behaviors, you can really change someone's life, because like that's what creates someone's reality, right? Is their behavior, which is amazing. So
Right.
does the process change depending on what that behavior is, right? If somebody has, some crippling self-doubt, or they're struggling with self-doubt versus somebody who's struggling with addiction, does the process change, or does it look pretty similar regardless of the behavior that you're aiming to change?
The process is relatively similar. The order of how we do things may change depending on what we're working on and the level of severity that it may be. And also the client's understanding of their own thought process or energy, because the neuroresonance is comprised of 3 different modalities. First, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, where we really kind of dig into what the current thought patterns are. And we start to look at what the goals are. What are the ideals? How do we actually want to view ourselves? And Reiki, which is a form of energy work, to get into the energetic side. So we're not only looking at the mental and the cognitive aspects of these thoughts and behaviors, we want to go into the energetic side and see if there's any stored memories that are, allowing that thought and behavior to just live. Because what we don't process stays in the body. And sound healing also allows us to really ground the nervous system. At the same time, it is energetic work as well. So that one's twofold, because if you are really stressed and are having a hard time even wanting to face your thoughts, because you may know if you have self-sabotaging behaviors in any way, it's easier to avoid them. But we don't do the work, we're not able to move through them if we do avoid them. So sound healing helps create more of an equilibrium. It's grounding us into the nervous system to let us know that everything's okay. So depending on what we're working on and what the client's knowledge already is, Some people come in and they're already super analytical of their own thoughts. Great. Then we're going to start with the energetic side because that's something that will help them kind of get out of that over analytical mind for just a moment. If someone
Yeah.
is really familiar with the energetics but hasn't done any of the thought work, then we'll start there.
So you have to, in a sense, meet them where they're at, kind of depending on the like who they are. You kind of have to tailor it to them. The sound healing, the sound work. What does that look like?
So I do all of this virtually. If people are in person, I'm based in San Diego. So if people want to come to my office space, we can do it in person. But I have a lot of various sound healing instruments. I have a set of 7 crystal quartz singing bowls, so they're tuned to 7 different energetic systems within our body. Then I have a few different types of drums. I have a tongue drum
Huh.
and rain sticks, ocean drums. I have a crystal harp. So using all of those instruments, we're creating a soundscape for
Hmm.
your mind. It's a way for you to step out of the monkey mind without trying to think of nothing. So the sound is helping to guide you,
Uh-huh.
and we'll do it virtually. We'll do it with the client listening to headphones because that way you can also still have the effect where you're able to feel the vibrations in your body, and the different tones will resonate with different parts of the body. And it also depend on what you're working through. If you're holding a lot of stress, like you just feel like everyone around you is putting all of their things onto you, your upper back and your shoulders are going to be tight because it is that carrying the weight of the world metaphor. And so you may feel a lot of the sound and the vibrations moving around your shoulders and your back to help break up that rigidity that has been placed on you from just the mental pressures of your life.
That's fascinating though, because in the yoga class that I go to once a week, every once in a while, she'll bring in
Mm-hmm.
the sound bowls and she'll do that throughout the class. And you can definitely feel the sounds emanating from those bowls start to, I don't want to say consume the mind, but like you just focus more on hearing that and then just
Mm-hmm.
feeling or hearing the sound if I allow myself to, right? If I get out of just thinking about maybe how weird these bowls are, right? If I just allow myself to just kind of sink into hearing it, I find myself falling deeper into the present. That's fascinating. That's definitely not something that we grow up being accustomed to. A lot of the people that are listening are starting a business or business owners. And from my own anecdotal experience, that process of going out and starting a business or being a business owner and in other aspects of life comes with a lot of self doubt. So I think it would be really useful for our audience to hear you kind of talk through how you navigate your clients through uncovering those memories that are maybe perpetuating this self doubt, or how you approach helping somebody kind of navigate and get through or get over, if that's the right phrasing, self doubt.
And that's such a common theme, right? Self-doubt, imposter syndrome when you're starting anything. I know that I had that when I was starting my own business too, and I used my method on myself.
Nice.
And I love that I've created something that even I can refer back to whenever I need it. And I can be that walking testimony that it is beneficial. It does help. Working with self doubt specifically, first, what we want to do is really start paying attention to what your current thoughts are. So, what are the thoughts that happen? Like, if you set out to say you want to register your business name and you've never done this before, and then you're like, okay, well, I gotta find some piece of paperwork to turn into the state and then to the country to say that I'm declaring this a business. Where do I go? And it's easy to get paralyzed from all of those questions. Using that as a trigger, as a situation, what are the thoughts that start popping up in your mind? Is it moments of I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody taught me how to do this. Even if I figure this out, the business isn't going to amount to anything. Like, we want to identify what all of those thoughts are. Just
Mm.
simply like logging them in a journal, writing them down whenever you feel them. And we're going to go even further into that and list out how you felt when you were experiencing that thought. What emotion were you feeling? Was there a certain spot in your body that you felt it stemming from? Like maybe your shoulders started to get really tight and tense and you were slouching forward. Yeah, see, now you're overcorrecting. I
Yeah,
do that too when I
exactly.
make myself aware of it. Identifying the emotions that you were having, going even deeper and asking yourself, what evidence do I have that these thoughts are true? A lot of times what we find in that process, when we sit down to look at the evidence that supports our thoughts, there's little to no evidence that those thoughts are accurate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Then we can ask ourselves, okay, where did those thoughts come from? And some people are able to recall or like, oh, well, growing up, I was always told that like I wasn't good enough. Or I was always like the slow kid when we did all the sports, and I just internalized that and it's become part of my persona. Some people don't know because we've blocked it out. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the Reiki and the sound therapy come in handy because we can go through a Reiki session. And Reiki is so beautiful in the sense that it gives you what you need. You may have memory recall. You might take you back to a specific time and place when you were younger. Then you get your answer of, oh, that's why I feel I'm not going to amount to anything because there was this situation that happened when I was 8 and I never really let go of that. I've just held on to the feelings that I felt when I was 8 and hurting from that experience. Then we spend time working on that, addressing how that little 8-year-old child felt. What did that 8-year-old need? So then it becomes a little bit of doing some inner child work, if say that's what it is. I also incorporate integral family systems. It operates under the idea that we all have parts, managers, exiles. So there are things that we've set up to protect ourselves. And so sometimes a managerial role will come in so that we don't focus on something. It's like, no, you got to be organized. You need to do all of these things. So we think it's being helpful. In a point, it is, but we also need to make friends with it and say, we understand what you're doing and we're ready to look at this. So step
Mm.
aside for now, analyze this a little bit further.
And are those integral family systems, are those actual other people that would be in your family, or am I taking that too literally? Is it kind of
No,
personalities
it
like
wouldn't
within?
be. It's like your personalities that get created. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody has, it's broken up into the idea that like everybody is a whole as a person. And given our experiences, there become different parts of us. So there are different protector types. So an exile would be something that like you don't even want to think about, you don't want to face, you just like packed it up, put it in a box. However, that's a crucial part of you. So at some point, we're going to have to dust that box off, pull it out, open it, and shine the flashlight inside.
Mm-hmm. If we want to move past whatever that exile part of us is going to keep us
Right.
from doing.
So
Wow.
as we've identified those parts, then it becomes okay, now that we have evidence that these things may or may not be true, the thoughts may not be true, what evidence do we have that supports contrary? So if you believe that you're not going to amount to anything, is there evidence that shows you have already amounted to stuff? Usually there's a longer list for that category. And
Yeah.
then from there, we use that evidence to start forming new thought patterns. So then when an old thought comes in, the new thought could be, if I'm truly invested, then this will be successful. because that might have been a theme from your past of maybe you were excelled at school or you were great doing volunteer work and being out in the community, or you had several passion projects growing up that were always received well. That is evidence that you are more than capable. So we're going to create that new thought. And whenever you start to think, I don't amount to anything, be like, wait, no, I am capable. And you have now a list of evidence that shows that you are, in fact,
Mm-hmm.
capable of doing more than what you think.
Amazing. Take this belief, this story that you're telling yourself, hold it up into the sunlight and say, is this, like, what is the evidence that I have for this belief being true? And then
Mm-hmm.
you get deep really fast. Like, that was what blew me away when you were sharing that part in the beginning is, okay, where is this evidence? Where is this story that I'm telling myself stemming from? Where in my past, where in my journey,
Mm-hmm.
where in my story is this evidence coming from? And then you work with them to then process it in a different way? Or how do you, like, once you identify where that story, where that belief, where that idea is coming from, I'm still curious to know how you process that with the people that you work with.
Many different ways, depending on the client and what they're working through. So, using the process of what the neuroresonance method is, once we have it identified, I give everybody a journal, and it's called the Power Affirmation Journal. If you do the neuroresonance method, I will send you one along with it, so you don't need to buy your own copy of it. I've already secured them for you. What's beautiful about this journal, I have never found a more guided and helpful meditation than this one. It breaks down the 7 different areas of your life. So if you're having issues with self-worth, that's working with your heart. If you're having issues with communication, that's working around your throat. That is a series of 10 steps in each section. That is a big step in doing a lot of the processing because it's asking you to reflect on what all of your current thoughts are about what that main topic is. So just using the theme of self-worth, and we're going with love. The first step is you're looking at all of the things that you believe. So what do you believe about love and your self-worth? And it's just a brain dump. You can set a timer, do it. The next step, right away, you're choosing what you're ready to let go of. So you're now taking power over those thoughts, saying, no, I don't want to feel that anymore. I'm letting go of it. And you get to write it down, saying you're releasing it. And then it's transforming it. Okay, what are the thoughts that I want to keep? And how do I want to transform them into something even more supportive that's going to get me to where I actually want to be with my life?
Man,
And of course, Reiki and the sound therapy is also another way to process it, because after each session, like, we'll go in, we'll talk about an intention, what it is, what questions we're asking. We'll have the energy work session. Then at the end, we'll have time to decompress and talk about the things that came up, make the correlations between the thought process and the situations, the memories that came up. And from there, it's giving different kind of homework assignments. There may be homework assignments where you are doing inner child work, where you just sit looking at a picture of your inner child and think of all the ways that you can, in a sense, reparent that inner child. It
right.
may be where you're spending a lot of time really tracking the thoughts so that you are constantly in a state where you're able to catch the old thought and really quickly bring in the new thought and continue
Yeah.
to do that until all of the new thoughts are now your current thoughts.
What I'm hearing a lot of is this process is rooted in intentionality. Like, I think so
Mm-hmm.
much of our thought and behavior and our habits and our beliefs just happens subconsciously. But I feel like going through
Yep.
this process gets you to intentionally go back and look at what are my beliefs that I have about this thing. You obviously do that initial discovery work to identify, and everybody could know, right? Like, what are the things, what are the areas of your life that you feel like you're kind of struggling with, right? Is it self-doubt? Is it, loving in your relationships? Is it whatever they may be? And then you intentionally go back and you look at, right? You bring to light these beliefs that you have, and then you again intentionally go back and look at where did these beliefs come from? Like, what is the evidence for this
Mm-hmm.
belief? And even just going through that, like when you ask that question, where did this belief come from? And they can fall apart just from that question, right? It's like, I have this belief
Exactly.
about myself. It's like, where is the evidence for this? And just by asking that question alone, it can be like, I have none. I have none. This belief is ridiculous. And then that alone can be super powerful, not only for your own internal investigation of your beliefs that are holding you back, but also breaking assumptions. Because naturally, as humans, most of the time, whenever we meet somebody, we're immediately going to make some assumptions about them, right? Or when some event happens, like somebody
Exactly.
shows up late, or they turn in something late, or they cut you off in traffic, right? You're immediately just going to make some assumptions about this person. Three questions that you can ask to just break basically any assumption, or have a more productive view of some other people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the first one that he asks is like, is it true? That's kind of rhymes with, and it kind of reminds me a lot of what you're saying. But yeah, intentionality feels like the kind of underlying way that I'm interpreting. Just kind
Yeah,
of taking it out
thank
of the
you.
subconscious, bringing it to the front, and being intentional is really the work that you do.
It is a very intentional process, and that is designed purposefully to be intentional because one thing when I was going through my big shift and my own healing journey, when I was at the beginning of it, I was really starting to get frustrated because I am initially from the entertainment industry. That's where I started my career. So I was walking into these things and I'm like, well, the customer is always right. Like the consumer is always right. So you're not listening to me. I'm like, you're just really trying to corral my thoughts. And I can see how it could be helpful to some, but that's not conducive to where I'm at in my process right now. And no matter how many times I switched therapists, if I tried something, if I started doing a different coaching, it was always a different type of structure, but some sort of structure that I was just being pushed into. So I really
Mm-hmm.
wanted something that was going to be more individualized because I really believe that we all have different situations. We all have different memories. Right now, I'm sure you and I have a very different lifestyle, and I'm sure we grew up differently. There may
Mm-hmm.
be some similarities, but if I tried to do exactly what I did for myself on you, it most likely would give some resistance, wouldn't feel the best for you. I wanted to create something that really looked at the individual as a whole. Okay, what is their environment? What is their social life like? Where did these habits even start in the first place? To really understand what's going on. Because for me and the work that I've been able to do through this, it allows us to get to the root much faster than just simply talking about it.
When you take the personalized approach, right? Not having just like a mass standardized process that everybody just gets cycled through no matter what, like a lot of these larger organizations might have or might be the standard in the industry. I'm not super familiar with the industry, but I know from other industries that I'm a part of that that's very much the case, like whether it's personal fitness or business coaching and whatever, things like that, right? People can just kind of have a stock process that they kind of force everybody into. And you found in
Right.
your experience when you were going through it, it just didn't work for you. So you started Eipl Healing to combat that, right? You
Hmm.
intentionally take a very personalized, individualistic approach, and you don't just look at one element. You take in the holistic, the whole system, everything that goes into the issues that your clients are dealing with. So how do you navigate that? Because it's easy to understand why these corporations, why these organizations have a standardized process, because it's easier to fulfill on, right? Like if you're doing custom work for everybody, it can be really operationally complex. So how do you balance that personalization while still managing to fulfill, kind of grow your business?
That's also why I have certain steps and a certain process. So as I mentioned
Yeah.
before, that process can shift the order, but generally it's the same. Like everyone's going to get that power affirmation journal, but we might be starting and exploring different sections than what other people are exploring. And so those are kind of guideposts, the little like guide markers in the process that can ground. So I at least have that as a way to anchor in a little bit more. Where I'm like, okay, we're all working with the journal. Okay, this person's over here, this person's over here, this person's over here. And I have a workbook called the Automatic Thoughts Tracker that I've created, which goes along the lines of what we were talking about of identifying the thoughts, the emotions that come from them, and looking for the evidence. By utilizing those two very physical tools is really helpful and gives that writing quite literally of where everybody is at. And then from there, we move forward. And so that's
Nice.
a great way that I have found to keep it still customizable, but also be orienting in the process of what the
Mhm.
NeuroResonance method is.
The NeuroResonance Method is this 6-step framework, this 6-step process to go from where you currently are to that outcome, that transformation. Everybody will move through the same 6 steps, but how you move through each individual step will be very customized and tailored to who that person is, the specific problem that they're dealing with. But when everybody looks back, when they get to the finish line, when they get to that transformation, they can look back and compare their journey with somebody else's and notice a very similar 6-step journey, 6-step process will be evident in everyone's journey. But again, how you navigate each path will be different for everybody and what's going to work for them.
Exactly.
Amazing. And that's the skill that you've developed, is how to tailor this framework, this proven process to each individual that comes in. And that's the value of coaching, right? That's the value of somebody like you, that technology like AI, that kind of stuff will just never really be able to fully replicate. What you're helping people to do is deep foundational work in their lives that most people never do. But I think it's becoming more and more popular because more and more people are seeing the benefits that it's having in others' lives. So I would love to learn more about your story. What was the struggle that you had? And obviously, we know the part that you sought out help and you found that the help that you were looking for, that you needed, wasn't there. And that led to you creating this business, which is very common in a lot of entrepreneurs' stories, is that you look for a solution, find it's not there, so then you go create it. But what was the thing that you were struggling with that resulted in you seeking for help?
It's unique because I was struggling with a couple of different things. As I'd mentioned earlier, I come from the entertainment industry. I was working as a project manager for themed entertainment. So think like theme parks, big immersive attractions overseas, things like that. Describing my job to people when I was doing it sounded really cool. And people would always comment like, "Oh, wow, like you must love your job. Like that's so cool." And they would ask all these follow-up questions. And in my head, I'm like, "It sounds cool, but I don't enjoy it. I really don't like it." I'm like, I'm so bitter about all these different areas. And it wasn't always like that. Like there was a time where I was very passionate about the work that I did and really enjoyed it. But the more that I got into it, the more I just started to feel overworked, underappreciated. And I thought, oh, it's the company. So let me stop working for them. They just don't have a good structure. Let me go to like a big giant corporation. Oh, there's so much structure. It's like kind of the same as the smaller businesses, but just more red tape. And I have to play a political game, which is not why I got into entertainment. Then I left that and created my own company doing as a management consultation services. For a while, that was great because I could choose my clients, but then I just started to see that it was still the same issue no matter who or what I was working with. That led me into some dark places where I just started to get depressed because it felt like my whole life now revolved around work, and that felt like my sole purpose for being alive. It very much defined who I was. I would wake up, go to work, feel all kinds of ways being at work, not feeling appreciated, that would lead me to want to go out and drink after work with other people that I worked with. And then I always justified it at the time of, oh, it's how you do this job. Like, you do need to go out for drinks with people and, game plan and strategize for what's next, come to agreements at the bar on how to move forward. Then I also developed a reliance on cannabis, and it got to the point where instead of feeling my feelings, I would just numb out. I really didn't enjoy that, and I didn't notice it for a while, as most people don't, because you think it's helping. You're not thinking about the issue. I had so many different things happening in my life. I was also getting out of my longest relationship at that point. I leaned into my substance issues even more. And one night I woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning and I was on my couch and I was just like, there has to be more to life than this. Like, I shouldn't have to feel like I'm living the same cycle every day on repeat where I would get up, go to work, come home, abuse substances, and then pass out on the couch, get up at some odd point in the middle of the night and go to bed to repeat the whole process. I'm like, this is not how I want to live. I caught myself thinking that, and I just reached for my phone, texted my best friend, and was like, I'm done. I'm done feeling this way. I'm over it. Then from there, the next morning when I got up, I started looking into things where I'm like, what are things that I can do that make me happy? And at that point, I had already started going back to my yoga practice because that was something that was naturally helping me lessen my issues with substances because I was being more physically active. When you're physically active, you really feel the effects of alcohol and any other substance on your body. So I leaned further into that practice and I completed a yoga teacher training. That's where I got exposed to Reiki and sound therapy. Before I even started the yoga teacher training, I was going to therapy, I was seeing a therapist. And I just remember every week after I would leave, I would feel more upset and annoyed than helpful, than thinking hopeful, because it would bring up things that I had forgotten about, or we would focus on a topic or situation that I didn't want to focus on. He'd be like, yeah, but you brought this up, so let's talk about it. I'm like, brought it up for context, but I want to talk about the thing that happened today. And now we're talking about a fight I got into with my brother when I was a teenager. Like, this is not helpful. Through that process of doing yoga, allowing myself to explore Reiki and sound therapy, which is something I never would have done because I was a very science minded person. I majored in psychology and have a strong background in that. So the fact that I was willing and open to try it just showed me that there was something that I was missing. And when I had my first few sessions with these, I could feel my body in different ways. I was understanding that memories were still living in my body because I hadn't done the work to move past them. I had packed so much up in a box that I didn't want to accept responsibility that I did those things. So it wasn't until I started doing all three of those things that I was able to really acknowledge what my thoughts were at the time, why I was doing them. For a period of time when I did yoga at my house, I would just start crying because I'd be in different poses and something would be unlocked in my body and my memory. I would reach for my journal and start writing out stream of consciousness, the things that came out. And then I would go back to it and I just started doing cognitive behavioral therapy exercises on myself and seeing how helpful that was for me. I did a coaching certification centered on CBT. as I was doing all of these things, I was transitioning out of the entertainment world, and a lot of the coworkers and the people that I saw regularly would ask, like, "What are you doing? Like, what is new with you? Like, you're acting a little different. You feel like you have more confidence almost." When I kept getting that question repeatedly asked me by people who didn't even know each other, that's when I knew that this work was needed, that people didn't necessarily need to understand what was happening, but they could see the outcome. Initially, when I started my business, my health and wellness business, I was just offering these things a la carte. And the more that I dug into coaching, the more that I started applying all of these other aspects and layering them in together. This method is already creating itself at this point. So it's time to get really intentional and hone in on it and refine it. So that's what the last year of my business has been, was doing that overhaul of really fine tuning the process of the neuroresonance method. This method really helped me overcome my own self-doubt issues. It helped me release the desire and the need for substances. And it's something that I still use when I'm working to enhance an aspect of my life or part of myself.
I think the most powerful thing, it got you off the path of just living a life that you didn't want to live and
Exactly.
what you were brought here to do, right? Your reason for being, your ikigai, right? Living more in alignment with living a life that you love, which is what the whole goal is, right? That's the whole goal.
Exactly. A lot of my clients, they'll ask me, "When did you know you wanted to do this work? Like, did you always know that you wanted to do this work?" And they have this idea of me just existing as a child, like, doing this work, and I'm like, "No, I didn't." Like, I always did wanna help people, like, I knew that. Like, I was like, "I'm here to help people," but I was studying to become a clinical psychologist, saw all the different drugs that they were putting people on, and I didn't wanna be a part of that, so I was like, "Hmm, good thing I also double majored and I'm gonna explore entertainment also."
Hmm.
And so I really saw myself doing that, and then when that started to fall apart, I'm like, the path revealed itself, and
Yeah,
if I didn't listen, I think it would have gotten really, really loud, and I'm grateful that I found my way here and was able to shift my life. And that's why I feel like I'm one of the biggest testimonies to the neuroresonance method and the things that can be done, because I thought
absolutely.
my life was miserable and I didn't have much joy, and I live a vastly different life now. I enjoy what I do. I don't have those thoughts of, "Oh, life sucks. Life is pointless." I'm like, "Life is
Yeah,
great. I love everything."
amazing. Doing this work on
Mhm.
yourself will help you hear but as you work through these things that you're struggling with, you will become more of who you are, if that makes sense. And as you become more of who you are and you allow yourself to be you, right? Like you're breaking these beliefs that you have just subconsciously created for yourself. But I think a big thing is that the world has kind of put on you, right? Like there's these things, there's these stories, there's these beliefs that society and modern culture have kind of created and adopted as like, yes, these are the right things to do. These are the right, like you go to college, you get a job, you work up the ladder, right? Like these beliefs aren't just things that you've subconsciously created for yourself, but I feel like a lot of times it's probably these beliefs that society has kind of put on you, again, which is also a very overused term and idea. But I think as you do this internal work and you break those beliefs, you allow yourself to become more of you. You become more of who you are meant to be. It becomes more obvious what that path and what your reason for being here, what you should be doing, right? Like what that is, like it becomes more obvious to you. And it's different for everybody. For you, it was starting this business and helping people work through this journey. But for other people, it might be being a sports broadcaster or whatever it might be for you. But it becomes more obvious once you do this internal work and let yourself kind of break these beliefs and step into more of who you are. It will become more obvious what you are here to do. And then you can go and pursue that and make that happen and make that reality for yourself. And that's when everything in life just kind of falls into place, right? You study the happiest people in the world. They're all the people that love what they do. And you only love what you do when you're doing something that's truly in alignment with who you are. And you only can find what's truly in alignment with who you are when you do the work to find out who you are and allow yourself to kind of become who you are. So that was kind of the murky thread that I've kind of started to unpack as I've heard you speak. But in your story, it almost feels like you kind of have to get to a breaking point before you make the big change, right? Before you start to do the hard work of making the big change in your life. Do you feel like there's any way around, like to avoid that breaking point to making a big change?
I think that it could be avoided if you don't want, because some people see it before the breaking point. What really drives the change is wanting it. Like, you need to want it for yourself, not for your parents, not for your significant other or other people. A lot of people with addiction recovery, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm here because like I was told I had to be here or my family's making me." And in those instances, the chance for relapse is statistically higher than somebody who's there ready to do the work for themselves, who's ready to make the change. So you don't necessarily need to have a breaking point or a rock bottom to know you need to change, because you can feel it when you're ready and truly, truly are wanting to make the change. That's when it's time.
And, the moment of most want is the moment of most pain, right? As humans, we're
Mhm.
naturally more prone to move away from pain than we are to move towards pleasure. But I think maybe we could encourage people to, even if you don't feel like you're at rock bottom or you're at pain, like you'll know, right? Like, if you're doing something that you don't love, if you know that there's some changes that you want to see made, right? But maybe it's just kind of like subtle. It's kind of just in the background, like, yeah,
Mhm.
okay, I agree. I know that I could change these things. Maybe just like explore, try doing some work, get in touch with you, have a conversation with you to just do it before it gets to the breaking point, because it's not fun and you don't want to have to hit rock bottom to make the change. So maybe just encouraging more people to explore it and do this work. And, hopefully, because there's a lot of very powerful forces that you're working against with this kind of work. Like when you entered the world of psychology, right? The pharmaceutical industry they don't want people to be happy and
Mhm.
healthy. They want people to be sick and sad so that they can prescribe more pharmaceutical drugs and make more money, right? That's how society is structured,
Yeah.
right? And the more you read, the more you research that, the more you find it to be true, right? They don't want you to be happy and healthy. They want you to be sick and sad so that you can be a paying customer, right? And make them more money, right? So very unfortunate, right? And it's something that is an important thing to change, right? If we want happier people, if we want a better world, we want happier people, but we want more people doing what they're meant to do, right? And we want people fulfilled and striving and caring about the work that they're doing, because that's when somebody loves the work that they're working on. If they're solving a problem that they care about, they're going to work really hard to fix it and they're going to solve a problem for the world. But maybe like a long-term kind of big mission is that this kind of work and doing this kind of is just like a standard, like a status quo thing that everybody kind of goes through, like in school or just like as a part of growing up. Like it just becomes a more social norm, like to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
for
something I would
sure.
love to see have this implemented in school systems. Teach kids how to identify their emotions and how to regulate their nervous system and what the nervous system is, because we aren't taught those things. And
Right.
that's another area, another issue that brought me to the neuroresonance method, because there were so many people who couldn't identify their emotions. So even though they knew they were suppressing them, they're like, I don't know what this feels like.
Understanding their emotions, being able to process their emotions, and also being able to think for themselves, which is a part of going back and digging and surfacing those beliefs that they've just subconsciously adopted, which is, emotional work. It all is intertwined, but going through this neuroresonance method, maybe let's bring the neuroresonance method to the world. Let's make it a standard that people go through, right? Anyways, some form, fashion of this kind of work of allowing you to break the beliefs that aren't serving you so that you can step more into who you are and live a life that you truly love will lead to a much better world. Kathryn, thank you so much for your time. But if you had a giant billboard that everyone in the world could see for 10 seconds, what would it say and why?
If you can be anything, be kind. Oftentimes, when you see someone or you have an experience, you have that reaction rather than a response. And so, what I think is missing from our culture is that we are forgetting that everybody is on their own journey. Everyone is trying to heal and work through their own things. And their own things are different than what, you or I or another person is working on. So by stepping back and treating everybody with kindness and reminding yourself that you don't know their story. Maybe somebody cut you off in traffic because they were rushing to get to a hospital to visit one of their sick family members. Or maybe their kid had an accident at school and they need to get over there. And you've just created this story of like, that person cut me off. They're a jerk. We have no idea. So instead of sending that lower vibrational negativity, just like, okay, I'm sure they had a reason. Do I need to know
Yeah.
that reason? No. May their
And
day
that
be better.
may you be happy.
Hmm.
May you be free from suffering. Yeah. That mindset of being kind doesn't just serve that person. It's not a nice thing to do for that person, but it's better for you, right? Because now you're not going to
Hmm.
hold that anger or that frustration or that annoyance or whatever that negative energy is. It's better for you too. But if you can be anything, be kind. Kathryn, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Kathryn Eipl. Here are my 3 main takeaways from the conversation. Number 1, insight is not the same as change. One of the clearest ideas in our conversation is that knowing why you do something is not the same as no longer doing it. Kathryn's method is built around that gap. A lot of people have language for their patterns, but they still have not processed them, rewired them, or built a new response. That is true in healing work, and honestly, it's true in business as well. Number 2, personalization still needs structure. Kathryn made an important distinction that I think applies far beyond her product or her field. No 2 clients in any info product are the same, but that does not mean the process should be completely shapeless and customized every single time. She has a framework, tools, and clear guideposts, but she adapts that path based on the person. That is how strong operators think, and the structure stays the same, but the application gets tailored to each individual. Number 3, the real work starts when you stop outsourcing the story. A lot of what we talked about comes back to examining beliefs that were never consciously chosen. That could be self-doubt, substance use, old emotional patterns, or just a life path that no longer fits you. The durable lesson here is that if you do not inspect the story running underneath your behavior, you will keep living in that form by default. And once you do inspect it, you have to do something to work with, or you have something to work with and you got to do the work to change it. If you want to get connected with Kathryn, you can find her links in the description of this episode, as well as access to her thoughts tracking workbook, which I've been using for the last couple of days and absolutely loving. And if you run a coaching program, course, or mastermind, and your clients aren't completing the work, download the free Program Execution System Toolkit in the description. It shows you how to install execution infrastructure so clients actually follow through and get results. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.